Well, the FBI is trying to track down, of course, possible terrorists in this country. They have been using informants in mosques in this country. Some Muslim groups are upset about that. How would you feel if the FBI was using your house of worship to look for potential bad guys? Is it crossing a line? Go to our blog, foxnews.com/happeningnow. We're already getting a bunch of responses. Sharon says the only ones who have a problem with these undercover operations are the ones who have something to hide. She said absolutely they can come. Jay is against it. He said, I thought we lived in a free country. This is clearly profiling. What do you think? The FBI is standing its ground on some controversial tactics it's using to uncover terror plots in this country. The agency is using informants to infiltrate mosques, and that is sparking outrage from some in the Muslim community. FBI agents and prosecutors say, though, it's one of the best ways to find terrorists or threats to our security. FBI Director Mueller is defending his agency. Take a listen.
We don't investigate places, we investigate individuals. But if we have predication, if we have information or evidence that requires our investigation in places of worship generally, we're very reluctant to do so because of the First Amendment privileges attended to it. Our guidelines tell us to use the least intrusive methods of investigation.
What do you think? Let's debate it. Former federal prosecutor Doug Burns is here, as is Salam Al-Marayati. He is the executive director of the Muslim Public Affairs Council. Doug, first to you to explain to our viewers what's going on here. Are people being asked to spy on their fellow worshipers?
Look, these are complicated legal issues, obviously, and what it is from a legal point of view, it's a balancing test. On the one hand, we want to legitimately investigate crime. The FBI uses informants, Jane, in every type of case. It's a very common practice. But here, there's a couple of wrinkles. Number one, if it's in a religious institution, a church, that may implicate some privacy and First Amendment free religion concepts. And then two, of course, everybody's throwing the term entrapment around, which is a complicated term that I can explain. But basically, as long as the FBI is reacting to legitimate information, probable cause that somebody's involved in something, then they go in, and I don't see any objection to that, but they are complicated issues.
Salam, you heard just in that soundbite from Director Mueller him say, we don't investigate places, we investigate individuals. If we've got something, we're going to act on it. Is that what you have a concern about?
Our concern is not the use of informants. Our concern is when informants become instigators of violent rhetoric and extremism in the mosques. They're not detecting trouble, they become troublemakers themselves. As in the case of Irvine, California, the mosque, because of its partnership with the FBI and law enforcement, reported a violent extremist in its mosque 2 years ago. Now we find out that that violent extremist was an FBI informant. When that happens, there's a problem, and the partnership that we built with the FBI and law enforcement is being undermined.
Doug, that's interesting.
Right.
I just wanted to let Doug answer that, because that is interesting. They say they turned somebody in who turned out to be an FBI informant himself. That gets into the whole case of entrapment, trying to entice somebody into doing something.
The point is, first of all, I understand what our other guest is saying, but you can't generalize or cherry pick a particular case. There are going to be situations, and again, just break it down into the legal common sense. If the FBI or any other law enforcement agency has legitimate information that somebody's doing wrong, has the predisposition, that's the term in entrapment, then they go in, and sometimes they do inflame it and ratchet it up. That's where it gets a little bit tricky. But that's a far cry from going in the first instance right off the bat and suggesting the criminal conduct.
Salam, I just have about 30 seconds left, but some of our emailers are saying at this hour, I would like to know if something was going on. I wouldn't mind it if informants were amongst my, in the midst of my church congregation or my mosque or whatever. Then I pose that question to you, wouldn't you?
So would I, but none of these cases that we're talking about now involved Al-Qaeda cells. These were individuals who were either petty criminals or gullible people who were guilty of stupidity. They were not imminent threats to our country, as the FBI has stated. I'm committed to protecting our country, but I also want to tell the truth to the American public that our tax dollars here are not being used to fight Al-Qaeda. We want those tax dollars to be used to fight Al-Qaeda, not to entrap people who are just gullible.
Salam and Doug, thanks very much for your time. We've been asking people on email and blogs, and John has some of those. What do you think of this?
You've heard from both sides. What do you think? Undercover agents posing as worshipers in mosques, using those mosques to gather information.